Hello! Today I'll be looking at this camera from Foxeer. But just before we get into that, a quick reminder, please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that little bell icon, please click it, it'll tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So, what do we have here? It is the Foxeer Falkor 2 Mini, obviously by Foxeer, and Foxeer's been coming out with some really nice cameras lately. I've been really liking what I've been reviewing, and the price has been right on them as well. So I'm going to get this out of the box and show you exactly what we get inside. And it looks like this. It looks like a camera, as you might expect. Now one of these little plastic covers, I think they've given up on the idea of proper lens cap. Feels much more substantial than the cameras we've been getting. I've just measured it as like 21 by 21 mil. And this is the one with the 2.1 mil lens. There is another one available with a 1.8 mil lens, and you can also get it in, I think, blue or white. I think white looks a bit anemic, but anyway, that's the camera. Also in the box, get this little Foxeer leaflet. These fold out instructions about how to work the camera. It's mainly about the menu. And this little box of goodies, which normally contains things like the mounting and stuff. Let's have a look what's inside this one. Yep, there's a mount. That one goes up to sort of the full size mount. A nice selection of connector cables and mounting hardware. A little four-way joystick thing, and another mount depending on another way to mount it. Which is all good. So what is this camera? Well, it's a CMOS sensor, and it promises a lot. It sort of suggests that it's good in all lighting conditions. If you point it into the sunlight, it doesn't overexpose and nothing goes dark. It's all perfect. It even suggests it's really good in low light as well. So we've got plenty to test it in. They talk about this thing called Super WDR. I think that's just a marketing scheme to say it has good wide dynamic range. Plenty of opportunity to test it out, hopefully. And because it's the sort of standard CMOS sensor, you can flick it between 4.3, 16.9, PAL and NTSC. Now the interesting thing about this as well is on the back here, where it's got its normal VCC ground fin, it's got OSD and VESN. So the VESN, you can put the voltage in to put your voltage on the OSD display, nothing new there. And the OSD, aside from being a sort of used a little joystick thing, it says it's got camera control, and I've looked on the Foxeer site, and it kind of says with our Foxeer F405 all-in-one and F722 dual FC, you can use the camera control connector. So does this mean it's a proprietary thing only with these, or can you use the normal UART and camera control in Betaflight to do this? I'll find that out. So next thing to do, of course, is mount this on a quad, test it out and see exactly what's on the OSD. Can we use the normal UART camera control, that sort of thing. Let's do that next. Right, so I've got the camera kind of wide up in my normal thing here. The OSD's a little bit different because I've got half of it wired in, but then the OSD doesn't have its own ground socket in here, so I've just borrowed my smart port for a second. Not exactly the normal thing to do, but there you go. So I just wanted to run through the OSD quickly, because I first did try using the camera control and nothing happened. And I talked to Foxeer on this, who, to their credit, responded really quickly to my Facebook message and basically told me unless you're using their own flight controller, it's a case of adding a resistor and going through the Betaflight CLI and remapping pins and that sort of thing, which they refer to as being plug and play. I have a slightly different definition of what plug and play is. So it's not normal UART control, it's the old way. Basically, if you've got a camera which has an OSD control, you could do this quite involved thing to do it. I couldn't be bothered to do that because it's just too much work. So we're going to just use this joystick, set it up one time hopefully. So let's plug in. And you'll see your viewing pleasure today are some Dig Dug characters I once made out of hammer beads, as you do. So first thing we can see is down the bottom of the screen here we have Foxeer, the voltage and the time. The voltage is coming from the main voltage, it's just a 5V out from my flight controller. The Foxeer name will stay as Foxeer. You can turn it off, otherwise it's called Foxeer, so it's not exactly a normal pilot name thing. Anyway, you get into the OSD with the normal thing, you just press the center button. Actually, just before I do that, I've got something to turn the OSD off, but I can't, oh there it is, I mean which one it is. So we've got exposure control, We've got WDR. There's this thing called Global Dynamic Range. I'm just going to go with WDR, I think. That's the standard. White balance is auto, day night, EXT. I'm going to set that to colour. I noticed one thing it was doing is sort of flicking back and forth inside the house here when I had that sort of transparent lens cap on, and that was annoying. So I'm going to set it to one or the other. Image enhance, all sort of samey in there. Video settings, so it's set to PAL, which is good. HD format, not really interested in that here. The special settings is where we can actually change the name and things. First off, I'm going to set this to 16:9, which causes it to reboot. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and this is just a case of saying open or closed. I also noticed that the image style is set to sunset, and it goes from sunny, cloudy, indoor, sunset. So I'm not sure where to go with there. I thought leave it on the sort of standard. I guess this is going to work better if you've got any backlight conditions, we'd hope at least. Lastly, you've got language, then you've got normal reset and stuff. So I'm going to save that, and that's got rid of their OSD, and I can put mine back on without it looking bad. And that's about it really. So I'm going to now take this away and go ahead and install this camera properly in there. As you see, I've got the mount they provided, and I'm going to screw that on in my normal bit there. Then we'll take it out for a fly, see how it does. Okay, we got the Falkor in. Look at that big lens. Looks impressive, doesn't it? So let's give it a couple of flights, see how it feels. Pretty nice sunny day today, bit windy, sort of great conditions for a camera. I'm sorry I can't test this in all conditions. I have to take the flyable days I can take. I'd love to see what it did in overcast as well, but let's fly it and see what it does. Well, I made several flights with the Falkor on the day, and this is my very first one because it's kind of, I almost fly reacting to conditions as well as talk about them later, so I thought it's quite a good one to show. So first impressions of this out of the bat is, yeah, I liked it. It was nice colours, nice and bright. Everything's looking pretty good. It reminded me quite a lot of the Caddx Ratel, which is my favourite FPV camera at the moment. The bit where I felt it was a little bit different is in the shadows. When I go towards the sun here, I felt I had less detail in the shadows. Everything sort of looked a little bit darker than in the Ratel. Now, I don't actually know if that's the case, because is it more about how the default setting of the camera is, and I've pretty much flown these stock settings. The only thing I've done is taken away the OSD bits. The rest is as it comes. You'll remember this was set to sunset, which seemed like a really weird thing, but given where the sun is in the sky, it actually seems a pretty good thing to do. But yeah, I felt there's a definite difference going this way down the field, and then when you're turning to go back, there's definitely more of that darker shadow there. But let's wait no more. Let's actually have a comparison between a sort of similar scene here on the Falkor and the Ratel. And at the point where you compare them side to side like this, I sort of realised actually it's really, really hard to compare cameras like this, because you can see how different the settings are. You can see the colours of the sky, you can see the colours in the grass, so just subtle differences in saturation and brightness and white balance and everything else means that the cameras really do look quite different. So, you know, perhaps I'm judging too harshly. The fact that it might look slightly darker in the shadows is probably more to do with how the camera comes set up, and if you want to mess around with it, you can probably get a quite similar look to that as the Ratel does. And many people would be saying, actually, I don't like the way the Ratel's doing it. It looks oversaturated in comparison to the Falkor, in which case they would be like, I want the Falkor. So I put it up here without particular judgment, because I think it is subjective. I really like the Ratel, but it may be the fact that the Falkor has the truest colours. I'm not sure. I'm lost at this point, but they're both coming out as pretty good cameras.
But taking comparisons out of it, because this is more about the Falkor 2 than anything else, and this is a second flight I did. This is a nice camera, but it does highlight the importance of being able to go ahead and twiddle with your settings, which I, quite admit to the fact I'm pretty lazy to. I look at what the default is and I decide if I like it or not. If you're prepared to put in the work, twiddle around with how the colour, balance, saturation, brightness, all that stuff works, you will obviously get the best out of it. But don't forget, that means when you install this thing, you're going to need to make sure that little socket to plug your OSD board in is available, and you need to take an OS board with you. So it is a bit of a shame that the camera control that was sort of advertised as such isn't really the useful UART camera control that you can connect to anything. It does involve either having one of Foxeer's own flight controllers or making up a little circuit to do it. It's kind of unfair to call it a downside because that's the case of all cameras. It's just the fact that it says this has got camera control, but it didn't mean what I thought it meant. But aside from that, I think a really nice camera with good images. But this is just the daylight testing. This said it handled night, so let's check it out.
Okay, time to freak out the neighbours, go out in the garden and see how the Falkor does. It's not as dark as it's been. It's just gone 8 o'clock here and it's not quite pitch. There's a bit more ambient light than normal, but we'll see how we do.
I did walk around outside filming with my phone, and I had intended to do a sort of combination of this footage along with the voiceover I made. But actually, looking at what we've got there, it's pretty easy to say that what you effectively have as this camera is it's about the same as your naked eye can pick up. So if you go into very dark areas, it gets very noisy, it gets very difficult to see, and that would be really tricky to fly with. There are certain areas I noticed when we got bits of bright light available, like street lights, it goes in this sort of flashing situation, which is really off-putting. It's a bit weird. It kind of looked like it was flicking between black and white and colour, but I've got this set to colour. So it's kind of weird why it would do that. So that's not good. So it's a great low-light camera, I believe, but it's not really a night flying camera.
So in conclusion, it's a nice camera. I like it. For me, certainly at these stock settings, I prefer the way the Caddx Ratel came off. I just got that feeling that the shadows were a little bit dark on this. That said, you can probably fiddle with it and make it right. I did feel though the Ratel certainly outperformed it as a night camera, and this wasn't particularly built as a night camera where the Ratel was. It went on about the starlight sensor. So better at night. This is still pretty good in low light, but you don't want to go really dark in it, but it'll have no problem sort of illuminating it, certainly on a cloudy day or anything like that. I mean, look at the size of that massive lens. That's just my opinion. What did you think? I'm always interested to know what people picked up from the video. That's why I try and show a bunch, and you can sort of discern what you like from it and decide which one's better. So if you felt watching the video, the comparison back, that this particularly outperformed or didn't outperform in some way or the other, let me know in the comments, because it's always nice to have a whole bunch of eyes from you guys rather than just me looking at it and sort of saying, well, I think I like the Ratel better. But anyway, great camera. Just for me, I prefer a different one still. Still my favourite, but this is coming pretty close, I have to say. This has been the Foxeer Falkor 2 camera and was kindly supplied for review by Banggood. Thanks, Banggood. And of course, you can find links down below and links to my other reviews of similar cameras. In fact, I think it might be a good idea to have a playlist that just says cameras in case you're interested in trying to compare a bunch, and it'll be hopefully over there in that corner if I get to doing this quickly. Anyway, hope that's been helpful, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.